Good evening, welcome, Stuart Payne. Hopefully you'll have seen me in some of my other webinars that I've done. Traditionally, most of those webinars are around digital transformation, change, and making sure that that digital transformation, that change really happens and that you have great success with it. So we're talking about a slightly different topic this evening, and we're talking about cybersecurity. So I'm going to go through a few discussion topics, mainly around preparing for the unexpected, driving actually a reason to have a decent security plan that's tried, tested on a regular basis, how to fend off and keep those cyber criminals at bay. But some of what we'll be talking about really to get down, I want to make it as poignant as possible by actually calling this cyber warfare. And you'll see when I talk about some of the statistics in the presentation, the webinar, that it's rife and it's dangerous and it's out there. And then we'll talk about some 5 steps to recovery, and then we'll also talk a little bit about air gapping. Some of you might never heard of air gapping before, but we'll get into that as we go through the process, and I'll talk about some of the benefits that air gapping can bring, certainly to those that are very sensitive to an attack, and we'll talk about what that looks like. So first of all, let me just talk to you a little bit about who I am and give you some sort of credentials. So I work for an organisation called Neo Technology, and we optimize organizations by bringing together our global talent. So I don't know if you know, I'm sure that a lot of you will be feeling it, but there's a massive technology skills shortage at the moment. And what that means is that you need to not just stay within the UK, you need to get that global network so you can find and source that global talent. And use those people, employ those people, and give them a great opportunity to work for an organization. And that's what we do. So we bring our global talent, we bring our foresight, our expertise with modern technology, and we bring the strategic capabilities to enable the change and to ensure that it happens. So I'm not going to go too long about Neo. We've got 120 people. We are global. We've got 3 global offices. We're a Microsoft Gold partner, and we deliver benefits, and we want to make sure that our clients see these benefits coming through. And so here on the screen, I've just shown a few of them for you around reducing cost of project delivery. So software development, typically we would save somewhere between 38% and in some cases more like 70%, because people really do overpay when there's no necessity to do that. We also then obviously look to increase tenant or customer satisfaction, and we've done that as well. Automate processes, all of those things that you would expect to see through a digital transformation process. And if anybody wants to know more about that, then please do reach out to me. Send me an email, DM me, find me on LinkedIn, and I can talk to you more about how we've achieved these objectives for our clients. Anyway, back to cybersecurity. So there are some issues with cybersecurity, and that is that sometimes the board, the CEO and the wider board are not invested in because they think it's one of those things that they can deal with later. And so absolutely you find some common challenges, and some of those are that you've just not got a cohesive strategy, and so you can't see the value that a cyber plan or an incident plan that's tried and tested can bring. Or it might be that actually, as I've already said, you've got no leadership buy-in because they just think it's a tomorrow project. Stories, some use cases of where people haven't had the right security and it's broken their business for many, many years. We'll talk about some of that. So again, common causes are that you've got legacy systems, you're on premise, you're not in the cloud. And obviously we all know, and if you don't know, you will know by the end of the webinar, that the cloud brings all sorts of security benefits in terms of cyber. Also, if you're working in a silo mentality, that can bring some real issues because actually, and we'll get into it, but the majority of cyber attacks come through phishing emails and or your colleagues, your employees sharing information that they shouldn't be. It comes through uh, not having a really good password or leaving your computer on. A colleague of mine was talking to me the other day, and he was saying, in fact, this morning, and he was saying to me that he was watching a program on the TV, and it was around the police, and the head of the department was sat at his computer. He got up and walked out, and the members of his team came in and got onto his computer and started sending silly emails out. Now, silly as it may seem, that's the way that you can create a hack. So we'll cover some of that off as I say as we go through. Poor communication, you obviously need to um, iterate all of the time the need, the necessity for watching what's going on online and being secure, behaving, making sure your employees, your colleagues are behaving in a secure environment, in a secure way. And really, you do need a good PR engine to drive that. No definition of success or what return on investment might be. And it's a really easy calculation. If your organization had to close for a day or 2 days, or in some cases, weeks and months, then that could take you down. And so the return on investment could be actually significant. Bureaucracy, organizational culture, all of those things. Again, it's reiterating that point that everybody thinks it will never happen to them. And we've got some statistics that are coming, and I'll show you, and it will prove that it will. And again, you might have a lack of resources, and again, we'll cover some of that off through this webinar and how you can resolve those issues. It might be that you're just too busy running around doing everything else rather than actually looking after the crown jewels. And the crown jewels being your data, your information, your software, and if it's not locked down properly, somebody will try to steal it. Resistance to change, again, coming back to that never, never. It won't happen to me. Well, I'm afraid it probably will. Or that your profits are being squeezed and you can't actually spend the money, or you don't want to invest in the money. And again, that's reiterating back to the board and getting that leadership buy-in that actually, if you don't, there could be a catastrophic failure that could ruin your business or your organization. So considering all of these things that I've shown you, and looking at what I want to get a better understanding really of the people that are here. We had over 1,000 people sign up for the webinar. So I really would like to see on a poll now that I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you a few questions. And really, so the question is, do you have a robust, tested and trusted cybersecurity policy? So if you can go online, if you can put into the chat, my colleague Ahmed is operating the chat for me. He'll collate all of the information. So just quickly, just say yes, you do have a super robust, tested cybersecurity policy, or no, you don't. I'll give you a few seconds just to do that. And Ahmed's in a different location. We are hybrid. He's working from home, as am I. And so it'll come through in a minute. So I'll just give you a few more minutes just to pop in the chat whether you've got a robust, tested and trusted security policy, cyber security policy. While you're doing that, again, just to let you know who I am, I'm Stuart Payne. I'm the strategy director for Neo Technology. What does that mean? That means I want to help you get from your as is, where you are right now, to your to be, which is where you want to be or where you need to be in order to thrive, survive, and have a great business. Maybe even disrupt your sector, come out with some new technology that really moves things forward. Okay, so we've got some polls coming or some votes coming through. It's looking like some of you are a little bit quiet, so please do join in. I want this to be a collaborative session. Do you trust your cybersecurity policy? Do you have a cybersecurity policy? Just let me know, yes or no. So my next question is, coming on from that, is if you don't, which one of these elements, so these are the points that I've just been through, do you think do you think are stopping you from having that really trusted cyber incident plan, that policy that really works, that you've tested? So again, let me know, which of these 12 elements do you think are holding you back from having that trusted incident plan? Okay, I'm going to go through some statistics while that's coming through. So I always find that quantitative insights are an excellent way of raising the profile and showing the actual threat landscape, what that financial impact might be, what the regulatory implications might be. A lot of our clients are in the public sector, and I'm sure that the regulator would have something to say about it if they didn't have a plan in place that had been tested, that was tried and tested. So I want to show you some of these things, and they are really critical for organizations. So I don't know if you know this, but there's a rapid increase in cyber attacks at the moment. A report from Cybersecurity Ventures basically said that global cybercrime costs a projected $7.7 trillion pounds, annually, and that's set to increase. So it's actually jumped from $2.3 trillion back in 2015. And by 2025, as I say, will be $7.7 trillion. So keep this stat. If you want me to send you the deck, by the way, after the webinar, we're happy to do that. In fact, I think Ahmed will probably send it to all of you anyway. But this stat is really vital in terms of being able to show what that threat landscape looks like. So what does that mean to you? So I've tried to drill down now into what this might look like for the UK. So the average cost of a data breach in the UK has jumped since 2020 at £2.8 million to 2022 at £4.2 million. That is a significant increase. And I would expect that continues to rise. So this statistic as well, just to let you know, this is an IBM statistic. They use it as part of their annual data security documentation that they produce. But it's really important. You really need to understand that these costs are real. If you have a reasonably sized organization, you could be facing having to spend this kind of money, in order to contain the problem, recover all of your data, and take the action against the people that have just tried to rob you. This is a really good statistic. There's also, and I don't know if you know this, but there's a significant rise in ransomware attacks. And I have not a client, but an organization that I know who had a cyber attack. It crippled their organization. They were a housing association. They had tens of thousands of properties that they rented in the south of England. Now, that cyber attack, that ransomware attack, was probably 2 or 3 years ago now, and they're still rebuilding their platforms. It's unbelievable, the catastrophic nature of a ransomware attack can cause. So just again to let you know, the average ransom demand was over £3 million. And I know that if you're a smaller organisation, that's probably not likely to happen because they'll realise that you haven't got the money. But they'll look at the size of your organisation and make it very, very difficult for you. It will be a very painful process. So we'll go through these. But the whole point is, and where we're trying to get to, is that actually we're creating that need to have a decent plan in place, and then we're going to look at what that plan might look like. Okay, so I've got just something in the chat here. Emma from Manchester. How can organisations assess their current level of preparedness? And we'll get to some of that through the conversation. So Emma, sit tight, stay with me. I'm going to try and make it as entertaining as I can for what is a relatively dry subject, unless you're in it. But yeah, please do bear in mind, some demands for ransomware will exceed £20 million. Um, and that's not a figure that I've pulled out. That's from Palo Alto Networks. So what I'm trying to do here when I'm giving you these statistics, giving you some credibility as to what actually happens in real life out there. So this is a really interesting one for those of you that are SMEs, that are that smaller organisation. And I think it's really important to understand that actually 43% of cyber attacks are targeted at SMEs, which is a significant figure. And I think that that will rise over the next few years. And I think that that will rise because typically cyber criminals will think that smaller organizations don't have that robust system, although there'll always be the challenge to want to hack a government or a bank or a large organization. I do get that. But small time criminals will target SMEs. So just to reiterate the point, 43% of cyber attacks are targeted at small businesses. Don't let it be you. Let's go through this process. I'll show you what you should be doing and give you the details or the outline of a plan towards the end of the presentation. And this is a really big one, employee-related security incidents. Well, I don't know if you do know, but 23%, certainly from a UK perspective, 23% of security incidents are created by human error, by negligence, by your colleagues, by your employees. And so again, please don't let your people cause you a massive problem because they've not been trained or they don't understand the policy. And test them, train them, test them, train them, test them. We'll come back to that. So sorry, so Sophia from Italy has sent me a chat in as well, and she's saying, okay, what are the most common cyber threats and vulnerabilities that organizations should be aware of? Well, I'm talking probably about one of them now, and it is that employee related security incident. You have to be, as I said earlier, you have to train your people. You have to test, send them emails to see if they'll open that phishing email, and then go back and tell them why they shouldn't have done it, what they should have been looking for, and reiterate that on an ongoing basis. But again, we'll talk about that further down when we start talking about the planning. So the other thing to bear in mind, and regulatory non-compliance penalties can be high. You think about the ICO, you think about GDPR. If you don't have a plan in place and your data is leaked and it's got tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of records of data, especially if it's about people and individuals, you are likely then to be reported, and the ICO will come round and they'll investigate you. I don't know if you do know, but the fines can reach up to 17.5 million quid. That's what we've seen already. Now, if you're a large, well, doesn't matter, you can be fined up to 4% of your annual turnover. So if you're a global organization, it's your global annual turnover. If you're a smaller organization in country, then it's still 4%. Some organizations only make 4%. Some organizations only make 2%, which would mean you would make a loss that year. And so consider all of that GDPR, locking that data down. Don't just leave it everywhere or anywhere for everybody to access. So phishing attacks, I see a lot of this. And I don't know if you do know, but phishing attacks have increased by 220% over recent times. And I think that that will continue over the next few years to really expand, because they're looking at targeting your employees, your colleagues who are not necessarily aware. So there are bodies out there, there are groups that you can join, um, where you can. Sorry, just bear with me. My chat's gone a bit haywire. There are groups out there that you can join, working groups. And again, if you want to DM me, I can send you some of the information around that, and they'll tell you how to run some phishing emails in order to make sure that your employed labour, your workforce, understand what they're looking for and report it as spam. So we're getting towards the end of the reasons for why, but 46% of organisations actually get hit on a mobile phone. It's really interesting, and it's something that people don't really think of. They're thinking about laptops nearly all of the time. In a world where we're on any device, mobile, tablet, laptop, make sure that your security is locked down on those devices. Make sure that you're not just flicking around on your email and leaving your phone laying around for somebody to access. So you can use all of these elements to drive the need to raise the game and the profile of cybersecurity within your organization. However, there is an issue, cybersecurity skills gap. We have a massive skills gap from a technology perspective in the UK, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I don't know if you know this, but 289,000 shortage of people in security, cybersecurity. And you think about that in real terms and what that means, not just in cybersecurity, but to technology, it's in the millions. And again, as I said earlier, NEO are looking to bridge that gap by going global, by building our global talent pool. And if you want to know more about that, then please do reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation and tell you how we do it and what's going on. So I've just had another question in, and this is from David. He's in New York, and he's asking me about uh, how my e-commerce website got hacked. All the money's stored in another location, so he uses a third-party payment provider. And so what's the consequence to him? And so what I would say is actually a cyber attack is not just about taking your money. Yeah, a cyber attack actually could be where someone's gone onto your website, they've hacked your website, and they pull all of your stock out. You think how many product lines an e-commerce organization would have? It would be thousands. Yeah, certainly hundreds of thousands. And so to have to then reload all that stock into your website, your e-commerce platform, would take a very, very long time. Meanwhile, you can't trade. You wouldn't be selling. So don't just think about cyber and a cyber attack as being about money, because it's not. Some people are just malicious, and some people will say that they'll put it right, providing you pay them a significant amount of money. So hopefully, if you consider those 10 things that I've just put there and gone through with you a little bit in conversation, then you can start to take that deck. When we've sent it out, you can use it to push forward to your leadership team, your CEO, your board, in order to drive the need for better cybersecurity. And again, any questions, please just do not hesitate to ask. Okay, so we're going to move on a little bit now. We've spoken, as I said, about issues or the consequence of an attack and what that might mean to you. I've kind of raised the profile of actually you could use these statistics to put to your board to tell them why they need to be changing, why they need to implement that incident plan, and why a cybersecurity plan or an investment is necessary. So what we're going to look at now is 10 essential steps of what you need to do to prevent or protect yourself from cyber attacks. I'll go through the 10, and then once we've done that, we'll go on to then what an incident plan might look like, and then talk about air gapping. Okay. So I've already said this, conduct regular risk assessments, perform them comprehensively, make sure that you identify your vulnerabilities, look at the potential threats, evaluate what you've learned from the risk assessment, and start to put that down into some sort of an order so you can actually measure improvement, because you need to be going back to your organization on a fairly regular basis to say, actually, our cyber risk is getting worse or our cyber risk is getting better. But make sure you perform those comprehensive assessments and move forward. So that's point one. Point two, implement strong password policies. Don't just have a PIN that people will watch you key every day. Don't have a PIN, because actually your employees, your colleagues have probably got a PIN, the same PIN for their credit card, their debit card, their mobile phone, their email, and so on and so on. So make sure you enact or implement a strong password policy. Use multi-factor authentication. I certainly talk to organisations on a regular basis about the Microsoft authentication element and how we might want to move to that, because some of the benefits that Microsoft can bring, certainly at the moment, and I'm not pushing Microsoft over anybody else specifically, but some of the benefits that they bring by being in the cloud, using MFA, multi-factor authentication, can really move you forward leaps and bounds and very quickly. But make sure that people are creating unique, individual, and secure passwords. So that's number two. Number three, keep your software and your systems updated. There's nothing worse than not keeping up to date. I was talking to somebody the other day about a platform, and they had built this platform 4 or 5 years ago. It's on an old version of a piece of software. It's now got some security issues around it. It's vulnerable. And that on that basis, I can't resell that platform. We've got to really move it from where it is right now to a newer system, update it, make sure it's best in class and that it's locked down from a security perspective. So look at all your old legacy systems and make sure they're as up to date as possible. And make sure if there are risks or inherent issues around cyber for those platforms, that you deal with them. We've already said this, and I've reiterated this point on a number of occasions now, but train your employees. Make sure they understand what best practice is. We don't want people going around looking at other people's laptops and then being able to access them once somebody walks away from their desk. Or their mobile phone, if they've left it on the side and it's not got facial recognition and it's a simple PIN code that everybody ends up knowing, somebody's going to cause you some problems at some point. So educate them, get them to recognize what a phishing email looks like, make sure that they can avoid downloading or clicking on links to download suspicious elements. Test them, send them tests, emails, and see who fails, see who clicks on those links. I'm not saying go back and tell them off and give them the hard word. I'm saying that's part of the training process so that they can get to understand. You can identify who, and then you can train them so that they understand what a phishing email might look like. Okay. Use firewalls and intrusion detection systems so that you can see if somebody's trying to get into your network, so that you can see if somebody's trying to hack a piece of your software. If you monitor it and you're looking at the traffic and you're then preventing that unauthorized access, or at least if you can see it, then you can configure your systems to be able to deal with it. And I think that that's really important. I've already mentioned Wi-Fi just now, but make sure that you secure your Wi-Fi network. Don't let anybody just come in and log in the network. So don't have default network settings, regular update your Wi-Fi router firmware, make sure that you're using strong passwords. So Robert from London in the UK. Hi Robert, nice to meet you. How can organisations effectively back up and restore critical data in the event of a cybersecurity incident? So we'll talk about that a little bit further down throughout the webinar, and I'll show you how. We'll talk about, again, I've already mentioned it, we'll talk about air gapping, because by having an air gap solution, you can get back up and running very, very efficiently or very quickly. So lock down your Wi-Fi. So, in fact, this is totally appropriate, isn't it? Regularly back up your data. So back up critical data, store it securely, preferably in the cloud, and offline, and or in an encrypted cloud storage facility. Ensure that your data availability and your recovery is available, because you want, obviously, in terms of recovery and backup, you want to be quick to get back to full operation. So make sure that your systems are running well, and that you don't have any failures throughout that incident plan. And again, the next phase of the presentation or the webinar, once I've gone through these elements, is all about that incident plan. So Robert will answer your questions then. Employee point security measures. It's easy to say stay and just keep operating the systems, and actually they may have a real issue with you. They may have want to do you some damage. So deploy endpoint protection, include your antivirus software and your anti-malware. Again, use that intrusion prevention. Make sure that you can see if people are trying to get into your systems, and see if you're a threat. And make sure you're safeguarding people's devices. You know, we've said this 3 or 4 times now, or I've said this 3 or 4 times now. Make sure, in a world where you have a mobile, a tablet, a laptop, or even 3 laptops and a telly, make sure that those things are protected through all of these things that we're talking about right now. Okay, one of the things that I would say is, and I've seen this so many times, and I actually see it in a slightly different scenario. So what happens is that companies buy licenses for software for all of their employees. And actually, they don't need licenses for all of their employees, because the majority of their employees may not use that piece of software. So apart from it being a complete waste of money, what they're then doing, though, by giving everybody access, is opening that opportunity for a cyber criminal to come in and hack them. So least privilege necessary, please. Restrict access rights to those that only really need it. And that way you'll minimize the impact of any potential threat from a disgruntled employee, or somebody that's left the organization and you've not closed them off and they're still on the system. So, key thing here, I've just spoken about those points, those 10 points, and you'll see them on this slide. We'll go next into the incident response plan, but make sure that this is a cyclical, never-ending loop. Yeah, so always be on a regular basis conducting risk assessments, implementing passwords, making sure that you're training your employees, making sure that you're protecting your firewalls, and have it as an ongoing basis. For me, if I were you, I'd be reporting back to the board on all of these elements on a regular basis. And if you're doing that on at least putting it into a board pack for a board meeting, so that's monthly, at least monthly, you should be reporting back to your board on what this is looking like, with some measures of success or failure. And again, that keeps you on your toes and keeps you moving forward. So we've spoken about what might happen if you have a hack, or a cyber attack, or a ransomware attack, and what that might cost you. we've spoken about, in fact, I'll just go back, these things that you need to do on a regular basis in order to ensure that your data is safe. So now we're going to look at what an incident response plan might look like and cover off some of the essential steps that I think you're going to need. Just bear with me. Absolutely. So Giles, making a SOC system, I think that it is a good idea. I think that, anything that you can do to raise the profile, enact the plan, make sure that you are ongoing, recurring, covering yourself from cyber or a cyber incident, then the better. So the one thing that I would say about this incident response plan, you can see here I've put outline, and that's because every organisation is different. The key elements are included in these next few slides. But I think it's important that you recognise that you need to customise this to suit your needs. If you're struggling with resources and you haven't got people to help you, then you can reach out to the experts. You can go and talk to organisations that can help you manage your cyber plan and your incident response plan. So, first of all, and write this down, make sure it's part of a policy that you put to the board and the leadership team. Clearly define the purpose. Make sure that you have the scope of why and what that incident response plan might look like, and state your objectives. If you've done an audit, which is the first thing you should do, the objectives will start to come out of that audit, and that would allow you to be able to put them into this plan. So something that you might want to consider is just minimizing the impact of a cyber attack, ensuring that you can have business continuity and that you have protected sensitive data. But do the audit, because I'm sure that there'll be other objectives that are quite clearly staring you in the face that you haven't noticed because you haven't done an audit. So build a team in order to deal with this. Yeah, you don't want this just to sit with one person in your organization, because if it happens, it'll happen fast and you'll need to be able to respond at pace. So designate the key individuals, make them responsible, let them know what they are responsible for as individuals and then as the wider team. Include your team leader, have the relevant technical expertise, make sure that you've got legal representation, and maybe, certainly if you are a larger organisation, ensure that you've got PR personnel or a public relations person as part of that team. So again, as I just said before, define their roles, make sure they understand what their responsibilities are and write it down. So containment and mitigation. So describe what the steps are going to be that you're going to take as part of that incident and prevention of further damage. Provide guidelines to your team for isolating affected systems. Block access to unauthorized users. And that part of that minimizing access to platforms. You don't have to give everybody access. And disable those compromised accounts. And so these are some of the things that, again, would be bullet points if they were in here under this headline. Preserve the digital evidence. You know what? It's so easy to say, I'm going to lock all my systems down. I'm going to get involved and go and chase things around and then forget about the evidence. But so outline those procedures for collecting and preserving it. Emphasize the importance of maintaining that proper chain of custody of that evidence, because you might have some legal implications. But above all, what you actually want to do is go back and read it, understand that evidence, so that actually you can stop it from happening again. You can change your process, your procedure. So define your communications protocols, understand who in terms of internal and external stakeholders, employees, vendors, partners, regulators, law enforcement, etc. Identify who they are, let them know what they need to do, and put that plan, write it down again in the plan. Specify who will be responsible for drafting and approving any statements that you're going to go out with to the press, because you can bet your bottom dollar, as soon as something happens, even if you're a small organization, somebody, a client may well be talking to another client or another prospect or somebody that you might want to work with, and they might have told them that you've had an issue. So you need to respond really quickly, and let them know that you've resolved the problem, that it's been mitigated and dealt with, and you've moved on. So have somebody responsible for drafting the press releases. In fact, you could go one step further and have some draft plans or responses, press releases pre-written. And I think that that could work very, very well for you. Just going to take a drink of water. So Henry, one of the chat questions here is, how can you organise, or how can organisations stay up to date with emerging cybersecurity best practice? And I'm assuming there that you also mean solutions. So there are documents. We've written an ebook on it. There are documents online that you can access as well. If you want the ebook, I will bring it up at the end of the webinar, and you'll be able to message us, DM me on LinkedIn, ask me for that book, and I can send you it. We can add you to our email database, and we can send you updates of the relevant next measures or changes in excuse me, changes in protocols. So if a new solution comes out, if Microsoft have a new release, if you let us know, we'll put you on our email list and we'll send you that information. Next one, recovery and restoration. Make sure you have a detailed plan on how to access this. So detail the steps in this plan for restoring your affected systems. This is predefined. And I'm not just talking about platforms, it could be networks, but make sure everybody knows what they need to do to get a fast restoration, because time is money. And there are some stats out there, well, I've already spoken to you about them, about how much time and money that could cost you. And test them and retest them before you get back to going online. I've already said it, keep your evidence, take the lessons, learn and document those lessons, and change the policies as you need. And moving on to training. Again, training and awareness has been a theme all the way through the webinar. And that's because if you have an attack, your implementation team or your team that are going to deal with this attack need to have the training, and they need to be up to date. It needs to be regular, so that they know immediately what they are doing. So just emphasize that importance of regular training. Schedule the drills so that you know that something's going to happen. Make sure that your incident response plan reflects that training, and that your policies are updated as you feel necessary. So we're nearly towards the end of the webinar now. We've got 40 something minutes left. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about air gapping and what that means. So if you think what air gapping is, it's the process of isolating a system or a computer from any other device or from your existing network. It's restricting people's access to a very, very small number of people, trusted people. And that's because you want to make sure that everything that you've got in play around air gapping is that second So the gap, the other side of the gap, is sanitized, is secure, and that nobody can access it because you're minimizing access to anybody else. Um, so I don't know if you do know this, but a key statistic for you, and this is obviously not me saying this, but according to Tech Target, 30% of businesses have now deployed an air gap solution. And you can understand why if you think about some of the things that I've been talking about in this webinar. You know, the cost of an attack, the severity of an attack, the velocity of attacks that are happening. It's really important that you lock your systems down. If you've got uh, very insightful data, or data that is very sensitive, or lots of payments coming through your systems, maybe this is something that you should consider, because it's a sanitized solution with a gap in between. But let's talk about some of the benefits. And the benefits are obviously around protection. I don't know if you do know this, but you know, as part of a backup from an air gap, it's in a secure location, it's inaccessible to anybody else. And as I say, you know, it can remain secure. Um, it's got lots of various other security measures around it, but you can make sure that you're on top of best practice from protecting yourself. Um, then detection. So there's only 5 points here that I'm going to go through. So, you know, we all know as technology, so we should, that we need to keep our data safe. And there's nothing better than not just having um, a filter in between you and a cyber criminal, but actually you're going from a cyber criminal to you to an air gap solution. So it's third down the line, and you're just keeping it away from those suspicious people that are out there looking to hack. So acceptance. So I think that, you know, you've got to, this is really important actually, you've got to ensure that your teams understand and accept actually that there is restrictions related to, sorry, I'm just getting lots of questions coming through now. There are restrictions to people who can access an air gap solution, and that it is minimized, because otherwise, well, it's not really an air gap, is it? And you need to make sure that the applications are consistent, that you back up effectively, that you test it. Again, coming back to all of those things that we've been talking about, and what that does is allow you then to, I suppose, recover and go back live on your air gap solution, whilst you then recover your mainstay systems at the front end. So again, that phased approach: 1, 2, 3, and you go backwards for 3, 2, and then block out the 1, because the 1 are the cyber criminals. Obviously, in terms of maintenance of an air gap solution, it's a simplified across all environments. It's centralized. It's got a great interface. Make sure that you've got all of these different things in play, so that it's easy to use. And that comes back also to the training. The key thing here is that recovery should, if you've done all of the things correctly, get you back up and running faster. So your RPO, your RTO will be more efficient. The key thing around air gapping though is, again, and I've already said it, if you have sensitive information, sensitive data, or lots of money rolling around your systems, then this is a very good solution to consider. Sarah from Chicago: employee training and awareness player, mitigating cyber risks, supporting disaster recovery efforts. What roles does employee training? So we've already spoken about it, but employee training is vital, because if there's a lack of understanding from your employees and your colleagues, they are putting you at risk. So train them about what does a phishing email look like. Train them to make sure that when they walk away from their desk, their laptops are locked. Train them to make sure, again, that they've got strong passwords. It's going back through all of those things. And again, if you want, without me reiterating it all of the time, if you want the slide deck, just ask for it. And I'm sure myself or Ahmed will send you it. Just one thing to note as well, as I said before, we have written an ebook. In here, there is a section on air gapping. It's not all just about front end cyber. Um, so again, you can DM me, you can send me a LinkedIn connection request. You can go online, visit our website, go on Contact Us and send us an email. Those Contact Us emails come directly to myself and Ahmed, who's working with me on this webinar now, looking after the chat and the stream, etc. So there's lots of information out there. We have lots of information that we would love to share with you. And as I say, just reach out. Key point here is it's all about protection. And it's all about protection because otherwise you are at risk. However, what it's really about is being able to achieve your goals without feeling threatened. At the end of the day, we want you to go home, go to bed and sleep at night and not be worrying about somebody hacking a platform or a system. So if you've identified that there are any threats, nail them down, sort them out as quickly as physically possible. If you don't have time and you don't have the resource to be able to do that, and or you can't get the board to give you that resource or the money to be able to go and do that, show them those 10 slides at the beginning of this webinar. Because if that doesn't stir change, nothing will. Okay, I'm open to any questions. I think we've probably got about 8 minutes left for questions if anybody has any. I'll go through some of these that Ahmed's been sending me through from the chat. But please, if you've got anything, do let me know. I think I've just got a new one through. Are there any? So this is from Patrick over in Dublin. Are there any industry-specific challenges or consideration when it comes to cybersecurity? It depends what you're talking about industry and which sector, because as I said before, when we were talking about the incident plan, make sure you customize it for your organization. I'm sure that sectors are very similar. And so if you think about one of the big sectors that we trade in is housing associations, or public sector bodies. They have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of tenants. And if those tenants can't communicate with them because the systems have gone down, then that causes a problem. If those tenants can't get online and see whether their rent's being paid, or look at make sure that the rent's being paid to the housing association and no one's stolen it, then there's more issue, and people will start then to obviously go and talk to regulators, etc., etc. So I think what I would say to you, Patrick, is reach out to me, DM me, and we can talk about the specifics of your sector, of your industry. And then we can take that from there and I can give you best advice. Okay, so that was Patrick. We've done Sarah. Let's have a look. That's just somebody having a bit of a jest about my open window. It's warm here if you didn't know. That's the one we've already answered. So, Robert, again from London, I think I'd said to you, you'd asked the question, how can organisations effectively back up and restore critical data? Well, hopefully we've shown you some of that. Very top line, I appreciate, because we've got a broad audience, but we've shown you some of that with air gapping and clearly back up into cloud, back up to offsite if necessary, or offline if necessary. So we've spoken about some of those things. But again, what I would say to you is if you want to get into the detail, then reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation. You're obviously in London, so you're not that far away from me anyway. So if you wanted to do a face-to-face, then that's great. Well, so we got that's the one about e-commerce. So just to reiterate, actually, it's not all about people trying to steal money online. Sometimes it's about people just trying to cause problems and trouble. Sometimes it's about people trying to hold you to ransom by taking something away. Doesn't have to be cash, it could be your stock in an e-commerce platform. Okay, let's see. I think that's about it. Okay, so sorry, one last question that we've got here from Alex. I'm struggling to find a cybersecurity specialist. How do I bridge that gap? Okay, so it depends what you mean by a cybersecurity specialist and whether you're talking about an employee, somebody that you want to come and work within your organization. There are organizations out there like Neo, and I'm not just pushing Neo, there are others that do put security solutions in place that make sure that you are protected. And so give me a call if what's resonated with you on the webinar, if that's resonated with you, then please just do reach out to me. We're always happy to help. How to evaluate the controls that are set, avoid cyber incidents. So again, we've already covered some of this off in terms of an incident response plan and a plan in terms of going, let's go back a little bit, of how to prevent an attack in the first place. Yeah, but I think that this is a critical slide. I think that, those controls are necessary. They need to be well managed. And going back to some of the other discussion that we had earlier on in the webinar, you need to make sure that your teams, your colleagues are on board with the plan, that they understand it, because that's how really you're going to get that level of control. Okay, time's about up. I think we've had just about everybody. It says here I've got 2 minutes left. So just to reiterate who I am again, and so that you know a little bit about us. My name's Stuart Payne. I work for an organisation called Neo Technology. We're a global organisation headquartered in the UK, and we help bridge the digital skills gap by bringing our technologists, our expertise, the strategy, the teams to enable you to be protected so that you can grow and benefit from real benefits for your organization. Okay, thank you very much. I hope that this was a useful top line introduction conversation. If you want to carry on the conversation, please do reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.